Hey dears, hope you're having a great day. Want to talk to you about college decisions. How do you decide now that you have all these schools clamoring all over you? Maybe some of them left you behind. They're just not ready for you yet. You can go there for grad school. Forget about them. Even the wait list ones. They want you, they can come begging. But right now, think about the schools you love. How do you decide? Because they're all so brilliant and shiny. I'm Jill. I talk to people about college essays, college admissions, college anxieties. I taught writing at Harvard, Michigan for a while, and I was in administration at Harvard for a little bit. I have a book coming out called The People's Guide to College Applications. It's out in March. Yay. But anyway, how do you choose? There are three different avenues that you can kind of think about this through. The first is, look at the stream, it's so pretty. It's starting to freeze over. Maybe, can you get it? But anyway, the first one is logistical. Like the first thing you have to think about really is like, can you afford this place? If you can barely afford it, are you going to make a lot of money at it? I mean, a lot of times when you're deciding between, like, let's say a state school that's really wonderful and, some private top 20 school, it's not always as clear as like state school is going to be cheaper, because sometimes you get money for the other places too. And like sometimes one school is close, but rent is really expensive, or another school is further, but rent is cheaper in the summer. There are just so many factors in terms of cost and also in terms of family. Like if you need to come back home to take care of your family, if your family wants to take care of you and you want that, there's so many logistical issues to think about. So put the two schools or three schools up in a competition against each other. Figure that out. The second thing to think about is your intellectual, all the intellectual factors surrounding it. So if you are a person who's grown up in a school and never really worked that much because your school maybe was easy, maybe you weren't inspired, maybe you didn't have to, and maybe your brain is kind of sick of it. If your brain is feeling tired of where you are and wants more to chew on, more to do, more to eat up, like maybe it's time to try someplace harder, someplace where you're really going to be challenged. Or maybe you were in a super challenging environment and it beat you down and you're exhausted and sad. And maybe you need to take it easier on yourself, right? So there are these things to think about. And, one way I kind of do it in my brain is I'm really brave in the morning and I'm really kind of terrified of the world at night. You know how you are. Maybe you are, more afraid of the world when you first wake up and you're grumpy, and you love the world at night when you're ready to, party or whatever. But think about school during these two different times and see how it feels. And one time you're probably going to be more apprehensive. And so what does that apprehension mean? Like sometimes it's a sign that maybe you should go to that school. Maybe it means that it's going to be scarier and going to be riskier. And like, man, going for risk in your life is really a phenomenal thing. Getting accustomed to it, getting accustomed to be a little over your head, because that's just how you live a bigger life. But not everybody needs it. Some people have had plenty of risk and they need to chill. So think about who you are and how you're going to figure the intellectual environment of where you're going. There are great professors everywhere. The thing about schools that have higher admission standards is the students are going to be maybe more on your brain waves, right? They're going to be able to think with you a little bit more and really plan out lives in a way that you might want to. Maybe the conversations will be more interesting. Maybe you'll learn more. Anyway, intellectual stuff. The third factor is figuring out emotionally. I guess the second factor is a little bit about emotions too, but emotionally where you want to go. Let's say, there's a real question of safety. Let's say you've lived your whole life in a small town and it's felt so comfortable and so easy. Maybe it's time to kind of give yourself some like emotionally challenging stuff as well as intellectually challenging stuff. Maybe if you've always lived in a tiny town, maybe it's time for a big city. Figure it out, learn it. Or maybe it's time for, a cozy college campus, but that has more diversity. If you are, a black or brown person living through this era and feeling like you're being persecuted, which I know many people are, go somewhere that's going to feel safe. Go somewhere where the politics are on your side. It's lovely to think, I'm going to go out and I'm going to change this world. Maybe you're one of those people. Maybe you have gnashed teeth about making the world a better place. That is wonderful. But you are not obligated to go somewhere that's going to feel unsafe. So please, get you somewhere that feels safe, because the point is you want to be able to learn, and you're going to learn best in an environment that feels safe and comfortable to you. Historically black colleges are set up for this reason. Sometimes women's colleges too. If you're somebody who just needs a break, they might be great options for you. If you're somebody who feels like you want the whole world and you want to, move through it with, if you're a white person who's always lived in a small town, my gosh, get yourself a place with diversity, right? Just so you can feel what the rest of the world is like. I think it's such an important growth moment for you. You want to grow in all sorts of different ways. Belonging, that was the third thing I wanted to talk about, or fourth thing, I guess. I said 3, but this is the 4th. Wherever you go, whatever you choose, there's going to be a moment where you feel like, oh my gosh, maybe this was the wrong choice. Or, I don't know if I belong here. Imposter syndrome is real. Everyone feels it, and especially those people who get into their reach school. You might feel like, I don't belong here. I'm not as smart as people here. I did that when I went to graduate school. I didn't have any experience in thinking like intellectuals or being from a fancy family, and I got so depressed entering graduate school because I went from being a biologist to an anthropologist, and I had no idea what anybody was talking about. It took me years to realize that, they weren't smarter necessarily. Some of them were, but they just knew the material more. And your own perspective adds a ton of information to the world. So my gosh, you are not an imposter. You belong there. If you were selected to be there, you belong there. I also taught the lower level English class when I was teaching at Harvard, and that was for students who, for whatever reason, struggled with writing. And it might be because they were never taught to write. It might be because their schools weren't as rigorous. And I'll tell you what, those students caught up to speed so fast. They came in feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to take this lower level course. But they ended up being equally wonderful and sometimes more wonderful than the students who didn't. It's just like a lot of people have different skills to build. And those places are set up for you. So please don't feel like an imposter. Don't feel like an imposter. You belong there. And my gosh, if you are in, Minneapolis or, I think there's a small town in Maine that's being kind of invaded right now. If you're in one of those places where you feel like you don't belong, or you feel like it's unsafe, because it is unsafe, my gosh, you belong. We're here for you. If you need anything, let me know, all right? Take care, sweeties. Bye.